starting from South, Oshimili South, and Ndokwa West and Ndokwa East areas of Delta State, up to Delta Central and Delta South, as I said before, heading towards Bayelsa, Rivers, Akwa Ibom, Cross River State. Alarmed that this perennial flooding, driven by incessant rise in water levels, has worsened in recent days, overwhelming homes, schools, and farmlands. Also alarmed that farmers are being forced to prematurely harvest their crops where they have the opportunity. Livestock have been lost, as I said before. Worried that the education of young children has come to a halt, as many schools are inaccessible and healthcare services are struggling to function due to the devastating impact of the floods. Equally worried that many residents have fled their homes, seeking refuge in temporary shelters and elevated areas, including primary schools, while others are forced to sleep outdoors or on platforms, awaiting the opening of officially displaced persons camps. Concerned that flooding has also cut off major roads, leaving entire communities isolated and worsening the already desperate conditions. And if urgent emergency intervention is not provided, the suffering of these communities will intensify, potentially leading to even greater and more tragic losses. Accordingly, Mr. President, the prayers are as follows: urge the federal government through the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, to provide emergency relief to the affected communities in South-South, that's what it is again, including food, clean water, medical supplies, shelter, to address the urgent needs of displaced persons. Call on Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management, and Social Development to expedite the establishment of fully equipped IDP camps in the flood-hit areas, ensuring displaced persons are provided with safe and secure accommodation. 3, urge the Federal Ministry of Works to provide dredging of the River Niger, and constructing embankments along the floodplain to provide a lasting solution to the perennial flooding in the area and other parts of the country. 4, mandate the Senate Committee on Environment to conduct an urgent assessment of the affected areas and report back with recommendations for a permanent solution to this recurring disaster that has long hindered the development and welfare of South-South as a whole. So I so move, Mr. President.
Distinguished Senator Mbigi.
The motion ably moved by our brother, distinguished Senator Ned. Mr. President, the motion is straightforward, and I will urge my colleagues to all support this motion. Reason being that the Niger Delta, as of today, we are sitting on the Atlantic. And sitting on the Atlantic is like there's a time bomb if we don't quickly have to address it. Mr. President, all the prayers here so far enumerated is straightforward, and I will plead with my colleagues, because if anything happens in the Niger Delta, if it definitely takes over almost all parts of the country, the motion is straightforward. We don't need to really see much to delay. Mr. President, I urge my distinguished colleagues to support this all-important life-saving motion. Mr. President, I so support.
Senator Benus.
I see in the prayer that the distinguished senator is asking for dredging of River Niger. The problem of flood in Delta states and Bayelsa states and all the states in the South-South are because of the flood that occurs as a result of the release of water from the Lagdo Dam in Cameroon. So unless we put in measures that will mitigate this problem, we will always have the issue of flooding. So, as suggested, dredge rivers Niger and Benue. Also, construct the Dancing Hausa Dam that was supposed to be a buffer dam on the Nigerian side that will control the water released from the Cameroon dam. So unless we do these things, every year we'll continue to have floods in the basins of Benue and Niger. Thank you.
Something that has been talked about also year in, year out, and almost at every occurrence of it. But I think we really need to work because the rains will continue to fall. The dams in Cameroon will overflow and be released, and it will flow through the Benue and come to Lokoja and meet with the one coming from River Niger, and it will continually be something that will be affecting people's lives. So I think it's to take action, just as it is suggested, that we need to dredge the two major rivers that meet in Lokoja and flow down to the Niger Delta. But before it even comes to Lokoja, so much damage has been done upstream. So I think, and I strongly suggest, that we go straight into looking for ways on doing things rather than just talking. I so submit, Mr. President.
Thank you. Distinguished Senator.
Mr. President, I rise to support this very important motion because everybody is affected. An injury to one is an injury to everybody. Just very recently, the release of water from Lado Dam from Cameroon had devastating effect across board, which I believe this Senate went to condone with the people affected. And it's a global problem. Today we are talking about flooding even in America and the other Western world. It's not only involved in Nigeria. I think in going forward, we will look beyond the problem itself, but how to have a palliative measure because it's a natural disaster that must occur. The climatic change is part of the problem. There is more rainfall globally because of climate change. More water will be released. All we need to do is to find a way of collecting this water that is being released naturally. That is what we'll be looking at. Water must be released because if it has to overflow, if the dam has to overflow, we need to find a way of collecting the excesses. That is where we have to be looking at by creating more dams, expanding the capacity of the existing ones to accommodate the excess water that is being released from the dam that we already have. We talked about the Oyan River being released the other day, just a few days ago. It has its own effect on the environment. So I support this bill wholeheartedly, completely, that we look for a more lasting solution to it to accommodate this natural disaster. I so submit. Thank you, Mr. President.
My name is Adams Aliu Eric Oshomole. I represent the great people of Edo North in Edo State. First, I would like to add that this flooding issue also affects a substantial part of Edo North in Edo State. And so Edo State should be included among the areas that are affected by this incessant flooding, including one that is happening right now. But I am not sure that dredging the River Niger and the River Benue is a solution. My recollection is that previous governments have attempted, or they did claim to have dredged the River Niger and River Benue. But every flood this season, the river gets heated up. And so dredging the river does not in any way stop the consequences of the Cameroonians releasing excess water from their own dam. I do understand, I recall that in a previous conversation earlier in the year or late last year, our attention was drawn to this matter and we had extensive debate. My recollection is that the conclusion we reached then, which I still think we should revisit now, or reiterate now, is that the dam that Nigeria was supposed to build to collect the water arising from overflow from the Cameroon dam, that for me is the way to go, and that is the lasting solution to this problem. Dredging doesn't stop flooding. On the contrary, flooding will help to resilt the dredge river. And like you know, sir, in the South-South, the easiest way to throw money out is to do dredging, desilting. You desilt today, by next week it's silted back. So I think that bridge that Nigeria was supposed to build, and I understand the decision was taken. Some preliminary work started many, many years ago, but like several other initiatives, it was abandoned. I think the Senate should take the position that second dam be built. That is the lasting solution. Dredging will amount to throwing money away every year. I don't think that is the solution. Thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished colleagues, into the prayers. Prayer 1, urge the federal government through the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, to immediately provide emergency relief to the affected communities, including food, clean water, medical supplies, temporary shelters, to address the urgent needs of displaced residents. Those in support of prayer 1 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 2, call on the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development to expedite action on the establishment of fully equipped IDP camps in the flood-ravaged areas, ensuring displaced persons are provided with safe and secure accommodations. Those in support of prayer 2 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 3, urge the Federal Ministry of Works to consider dredging the River Niger and constructing embankments along the floodplain to provide a lasting solution to the perennial flooding in the areas and other parts of the country affected by flood. Amendment, yes, of both River Benue and River Niger in order to, and its tributaries, in order to provide a lasting solution to the perennial flooding problems in those areas affected in the country. Those in support of the amended prayer 3 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 4, mandate the Senate Committee on Environment to conduct an urgent assessment of the affected areas and report back to the Senate with recommendations for a permanent solution to this recurring disaster that has long hindered the development and welfare of the good people of the South-South region. Those in favor of prayer 4 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. So,
additional prayers.
So the clerk, where you see Delta, you put South-South. And seconded that these various state governments should first provide palliatives and relief materials as a matter of urgency to the affected communities before even the federal government agencies move in. Those in support of this additional prayer say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. So let me thank my brother, distinguished Senator Ned Nwoko, for bringing the plight of the South-South region to the fore. As soon as we saw the devastating floods in the northern part of the country, I knew that eventually all the water would drain to the south. And it has happened, and I hope that most of the southern governors or governments were prepared, because it is not something that will take them by surprise. is on a yearly basis. And we have taken the right steps with the resolutions we have taken now to ameliorate the plight of the people, but we do hope that everybody should have been prepared for this. Yes, it might look like emergency, but this natural disaster that happens on a yearly basis. We sympathize with the families of those affected, but we assure them that with these resolutions, that the various federal government agencies will rise to the occasion to ensure that their plight is addressed and addressed squarely. Thank you for all your contributions. And may God Almighty help us to get out of all these disasters. Leader of the Senate.